If you've built anything on Azure OpenAI, you've hit a fork in the road. You want the model to do something useful with your systems, and you want its answer in a shape your code can parse. Two features promise to help: function calling and structured outputs. They sound similar. People use them interchangeably, and that's exactly where designs go wrong. In the next 5 minutes, we'll build one thing end-to-end, a support triage assistant that uses both correctly. By the end, you'll know which feature solves which problem, how to wire them together, and what to check when it's running. Let's clear up the confusion first. Here's the core distinction. Function calling lets the model decide to invoke a tool you defined, and it returns a JSON object of arguments for that tool. The model does not run anything. Your code executes the function and feeds the result back. It's about taking actions, like querying a database or calling an API. Structured outputs is different. It constrains the model's final answer to a JSON schema you supply, with strict mode guaranteeing the output validates against that schema every time. It's about the shape of the response, not about doing work. The key insight: these are orthogonal. You often use both in the same request, and the strict schema enforcement now applies to function arguments too. Our assistant takes a raw customer message and produces a typed triage record, category, severity, and a suggested next step. But to set severity well, it needs live data, the customer's current plan and open ticket count, which lives in our own service. So the flow is: the model calls a tool to look up the account. Our code hits the backend and returns the data. Then the model produces a final structured triage object. Function calling handles the lookup. Structured outputs guarantees the triage record matches our schema so it drops straight into a database. Here's how it's wired on Azure. Start with the destination shape, because that's the contract everything else serves. We pass a response format of type JSON schema, set strict to true, and define the triage object. Strict mode means the model is constrained at decode time, so you get valid JSON that matches every required field with no extra keys, no markdown fences, no apologies. One catch: with strict, every property must be required and additional properties must be false. If you want optional fields, model them as a union with null. This needs a recent model like GPT-4o from the August 2024 release or later, and a current API version, so check the docs for exact support. Now the action half. We define a tool named lookup_account with its own parameter schema, also strict, so the arguments the model emits are guaranteed valid. We send the user message and the tools list. The model responds with a tool call instead of a final answer. Our code reads the arguments, calls the Azure function, and appends the result as a tool message back into the conversation. Then we call the model a second time. This two-pass loop is the heart of function calling: request, execute, respond. The model never touches your backend directly. You stay in control of every side effect, retries, and auth. Here's the part people miss. You can't always do both in a single request. On that first call, you pass the tools so the model can request the lookup. The response is a tool call, not your triage object yet. On the second call, after you've supplied the account data, you pass the response format with your strict JSON schema, so the final answer is the typed triage record. So tools drive the first turn. Structured outputs locks down the last turn. As a rule of thumb, if you need the model to act, use function calling. If you need a guaranteed shape to hand to code, use structured outputs. When you need both, sequence them across turns. Before you trust this in production, check a few things. First, confirm finish reason is stop, not length. On the final call, a truncated response can still be valid JSON but missing data. Second, when the model wants a tool, finish reason is tool_calls, and you should handle the case where it requests multiple calls. Third, Even with strict mode, validate against your schema on your side, because refusals come back in a separate refusal field, not as your object. Fourth, log token usage. The 2-pass loop roughly doubles your calls, so watch latency and cost. And pin your API version, since behavior and model support shift between releases. So, to recap, function calling is about getting validated arguments so your code can take an action and feed results back. Structured outputs is about shape, constraining the final answer to a strict schema you can parse without defensive code. They're orthogonal, and our triage assistant used tools on the first turn and a strict schema on the last. Your one concrete takeaway: design the output schema first, treat it as the contract, then add tools only for the data the model can't already see. Build that loop once and reuse it everywhere. And because model and API support for strict mode changes, always confirm against the current Azure OpenAI docs before you ship. If this helped, do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one. See you in the next video.